Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, boys and girls, welcome back to the Investigative Journal, the greatest show on earth, the show that tells you everything you need to know about how to cope with the Vatican-led New World Order. And I do add Jesuit in there, the Jesuit New World Order. And today, I want to talk about two things, and then we'll get to a few comments about the political landscape in Washington. The next American Revolution, folks, won't look like the first one at all. And secondly, I'm going to show you how, what's her name, Ocasio Cortez, is linked to the Jesuits right from the very beginning. Yes, I'm going to do that for you today. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about this nonsense going on in Washington, D.C. First off, how do you attack this problem? You see that nothing's getting done there. And it's just a carnival show that they are putting on for you. It's a theatrical performance. Hollywood gets involved with Robert De Niro cussing at President Trump. And you have to look at this as a stage, a political stage, and we are the audience. But what you're watching isn't really real. It's an act put on to get this country into the New World Order, hook, line, and sinker. What they want is the destruction of this country as we have made it grow over the years, along with their approval, so to speak. We've been nothing but slaves, all of us, since the passage of the 14th Amendment. And although political and legal scholars will argue that point, I doubt if you'll ever hear that said on one of the mainstream news broadcasts, because basically they are in line with the Jesuit oath, and that is the ends justify the means. And that's why you hear CNN simply be the voice box for the radical Democratic Party, the radical Socialist Democratic Party, and the voice box for the right-wing conservatives is Fox News. And so what's happened is people are aligning with one of those two organizations. And that's the first mistake. Because you have to understand that to understand really the political landscape of this country, you have to not fall into that trap. You can't be either a Democratic Socialist or a Republican, because they both work together. And if you look at it that way, if you look at the Hegelian dialectic in play in America right now, you'll see it perfectly. It's right there. The right wing polarizes its people, the left wing polarizes its people, and they fight to the death. And there's a synthesis that's gotten out of that. And the synthesis is always what the Vatican-led Jesuit New World Order want. And what do they want? They've told you. They want a one-world government, a one-world religion. And you're seeing that unfold right before your eyes. Now, all of these little arguments and these things we have as far as the border, as far as, gun control, abortion, all of these issues have to be looked at in the same light. Because if you just fall into the trap of thinking that there's a solution with one of these two ideas in America, you're wrong. Because the solution will be what the synthesis is after the two parties rub together so hard that there can no longer be two parties, and it will evolve into something else. And that something else, folks, is socialism to start out with. A socialistic country, you're seeing them do it right now. And I don't want to go over every little aspect of it, but you have to first start by understanding where socialism started. Where did socialism begin, really, in the modern world? It began in Paraguay with the Paraguay reductions or experiments, run by the black coats, the Jesuits. And if you read exactly what they did there, it was the model that now you'll see in places like Venezuela, Cuba. You'll see it was a model for communism. It was a model for every situation that you see unfolding today when people like Ocasio Cortez and Omar, the Muslim Somalian, and then we have the other two who they've now nicknamed the Squad. Isn't it interesting how they do this to you? But these four people represent the future of America. And you're seeing a Democratic Party bow down to them. Now, who are they bowing down to? They are bowing down to the Jesuit order. Because I'm going to show you today Ocasio-Cortez's link to them when she first ran for U.S. representative in the Bronx. And then I want to talk about what this next revolution is going to look like. And it's going to be very similar to the French Revolution. And if you don't know much about that, you'll also find out that the Jesuits were deeply involved in that, as they were in our American Revolution, which many, many historians will not come to grips with, because if they do, they are banished, ostracized. You will not make any money. You will not get on TV. Because the leaders of this world and of our government and of our media comes right from Rome. And we will talk about that today. Yes, we will talk about that today. Okay, a little aside here. When you listen to the rants that are going on now on CNN in favor of the radical Socialist Democratic Party, then you hear the rants on the right-wing side denouncing this radicalism. They're viewing it from a point of view that their party is pure, that this is basically the desire of the American people. And you're not hearing the full story, because what they're doing is both of them isolating a certain group. And in America now you can see that division. 50% of the people love Trump, 50% hate them. But in the background you have things going on like a group called Antifa, which is short for anti-fascist. And they, of course, are on the radical side and doing an enormous amount of damage to people. They've put people in the hospital. They have tried to blow up certain government facilities. They're basically a revolutionary arm of the Jesuit Democratic Party. And you're going to see that kind of violence grow and grow and grow. But the media on their side covers it very, very nonchalantly, so to speak. They're even justifying it to fight against what they consider to be fascism. Now, who is the fascist here? They usually call somebody the fascist when they are the fascist, and that's exactly what it is. Now, on the other side, you're getting the rants and raves from the right-wing journalists as well as Trump and the rest of when he holds a rally, that they cannot stand these four congresswomen and they want them to go back to their country, etc., etc. And these congresswomen are making outlandish statements about America, about Israel, etc., etc. And so you're seeing this hatred building up on both sides. And this is orchestrated, folks. Because both sides don't tell you exactly that this is an orchestrated effort. If there's anything orchestrated, this is the beginning of it. The whole political system here. This is an orchestrated theatrical event. And all the rest of these things are also orchestrated. The border, abortion, and every issue that divides people is basically orchestrated from this major orchestration of Washington, D.C. as we know it today. Now, this doesn't just happen. This is planned. And the people behind it are, of course, who I consider to be the leaders of the New World Order, and that is the Vatican-led Jesuits. Okay? And they're very smart. They've weaseled their way into most every aspect of our life in this country, albeit perhaps you're not going to see them come out and talk about it. This is a secret organization. But they've weaseled their way into everything, into your finances, into what else? Your social life. They've weaseled their way into education, Jesuit education. And you're seeing that vividly. Let me give you an example. Yesterday I turned on Fox, and there was Cortez, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, standing there saying that it's 110 degrees in Washington, D.C. This is climate change, and if we don't do something about it, that means get rid of your cars, get rid of cow flatulence, get rid of cow farting, right? Get rid of planes, and we don't get rid of fossil fuels. In 10 years, the world's going to collapse. There's going to be no world. And guess who's standing behind her? Young 8 and 9 and 10-year-old children in their little shirts, representing her movement. Now, what do you think they're doing? Do you think these kids are growing up believing in America and capitalism? No, they're believing in socialism as the Jesuits want. Jesuit education. And as the years go by, I would say 30, 40 years from now, you won't see this country. The face of this country will be totally different. Many of the baby boomers will be dead. Many of the people that are fighting this last battle will be gone. And it'll be so much easier when they flood this country with, basically subservient workers from Central America and all over the world, Africa, whatever you have. And it'll be easy to do what they want to do without firing a shot. And we won't be able to fire a shot because they'll already have taken your guns. And so you can see the writing on the wall here. Now, if you think Trump and his band of merry men, of nationalists, are going to change this, forget it. They are working with Ocasio Cortez on the orders of the Jesuits in the Vatican to do this. And it's the last stand. It's like I look at the American people as the white. They're saying anything right now, like if you're white in America, you're evil. If you're white, you're privileged. If you're white, you're this. You're white, you're that. Because these women are of color. Now, what more racist opinion is that? That's what they're saying. And people just don't want to question them. But here, let me give you an example. Everyone is of color. You have a color. I have a color. Muhammad Ali had a color. A Japanese sumo wrestler has a color. We all have colors. We all are different colors. But they want to corner the racist argument by saying we are the women of color and you can't criticize us because if you do, it's racist. That's exactly what they're saying. And nothing is more racist than what they just said. They do not want to be questioned on their opinions and on their ideas. They want to shield themselves from all criticism by claiming that they are a victim. And that goes for Representative Omar from Minnesota, from Somalia. She's supposedly a Somali immigrant. But let's just talk about Omar for 1 minute. You know the anti-Semitic statements she makes. And you know a lot of the other things that are made to incite the Trump band of merry Americans, right? But there's articles coming out now from Minnesota. Where did she come from? And there's a guy who wrote an article the other day that was actually featured on the on the right-wing Tucker Carlson show. And he's found out that perhaps she came here illegally, that the family that she said she was a member of was not exactly her family, and her other 2 siblings came as well. So she enters the country illegally. Then there's articles that confirm 99% for sure she married her own brother for tax reasons. So this idea, will she ever be called on it by the left-wing journalists of CNN? No. And it's the same thing that Obama wasn't called on when Obama perhaps wasn't even born here. right? So this is not unusual. So we have Omar, who comes into America most likely illegally, claiming that America sucks and she wants to change white privilege, and she's justified by denouncing Israel and everything else. And she basically shouldn't even be here. So this is the Jesuit way. And I know they did the same thing with Obama. And he was just the beginning of what you call this changeover to radical socialism in the Democratic Party. And that's going to be the issue in 2020. But whatever happens there, we will wait and see. But you can see basically the writing on the wall here. So we can do a whole show on Omar and her antics. But I want to get back to this idea of socialism. And it's interesting that all of a sudden it cropped up just when the Democrats took over the House, and Trump is now on his way for his second term, right? They're all now in this campaign mode. And the socialist idea came in when these new freshman congressmen came in. And before that, you didn't hear there were fringe groups talking about socialism. But within the shake of an eye, the snap of a finger, the Democratic Party is turning into a socialist Democratic Party. There's no doubt about that if you follow politics. And this is orchestrated. And they bring in these young people like Cortez, who's Hispanic. Then we got Omar, who's Somali Muslim. We got Rashida Tlaib, another freshman woman from, where's she from? Tlaib, I can't remember the state. But she is a Palestinian. And then, of course, we got our token black woman that's in there. So they got all their bases covered. But socialism, like I said, folks, came from this idea. How they masterminded it was with the Paraguay reductions and what they did to the natives of Paraguay. And then it moved into Western civilization. After the Jesuits had basically made money on this, they perfected this system of government, which is now, you see, has grown in certain areas of the world, and it has failed. But it also when you get socialism, it morphs into basically what China is all about, fascist country. And China's an interesting example. North Korea. Socialism always morphs into communism or into fascism. There's no doubt about it. Because they come in claiming to give you the world, and then they take your world. And so I made a statement the other day that Ocasio Cortez is linked to the Jesuits. And people said, well, where's the links? And I said, well, listen, first of all, let's look at the history of socialism. And she's pushing this, so we have to have some kind of tie there, although we can't basically pinpoint. In fact, can we? No, it's basically an ideology that she's adopted. But where did she get it? She's not a very smart woman, by the way. If you listen to her talk, her history's all screwed up. And she makes statements that a high school student wouldn't make running for the high school class president. She wouldn't win that. With this idea of a new Green New Deal, which makes absolutely no sense, but they put it out there. So, knowing the Jesuits are the founders of socialism, you can make the analogy that she had to talk to some of them, right? Now, we have to understand we're dealing with a secret organization here, so they're not going to come out and tell you. And they'll probably hide a lot of their connections. We always know the connections of the Clintons with, Jesuit, their mentors being many Jesuits. We've pinpointed that, but that doesn't seem to really get into the minds of the American people. They don't really care because they really don't understand who the Jesuits and the Vatican really are, so it makes it difficult. But let me give you this article I found. And this was in June 27th, 2018. Let me make sure I have some time. We'll go to the other side of the break. I got 4 minutes here, so I don't want to lose you. But there's an article that Ocasio Cortez wrote, supposedly. I don't think she wrote it. She put her name to it. And it's on a website called the AmericanMagazine.org, and it's the America, the Jesuit Review. Okay? So here she is, and nobody knew her really. In 2018, here she is, this young woman, and you've got a picture of her with her hand out and yelling, and it says Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, May 26, 2016. And she puts her name to this article on the Jesuit Review. And you would think it would be something political, but yet listen to it. It is. It's regarding getting our criminal justice system in line. Now, what the hell does she know about it? She probably knows less than somebody in high school that studies or is in the first year of their criminal justice. She doesn't know anything. She's told what to say. And this article proves it, because I don't think she wrote this. And let me tell you how this starts. And if you don't think that there's a connection to the Jesuits, putting her name to the Jesuit Review, now most people, it'll go over their heads because they don't understand who the Jesuits really are. And I'm only going to read you the first paragraph, then we're going to get into this. But you'd think it would start like something like, as a newly elected or a wannabe elected representative, I move to help the people, in the criminal justice system. And I've studied, you give facts, give things that tell me she knows something about the criminal justice system. Because the headline is Alexandria Ocasio Cortez on her Catholic faith and the urgency of criminal justice reform. So she's mixing in now her Catholic faith and the Jesuit Review with the urgency of criminal justice reform. Now, who's going to deny that she is involved with these people? I believe she got money from them. I believe that if you really look deeply, she was selected to play this role. Let me tell you why. She's from the Bronx, in a pretty Hispanic liberal district. She has a pretty good speaking voice. She's nothing more than a mouthpiece getting all this publicity now nationwide for really being stupid. And both sides, not only the left-wing journalists on CNN, but the right-wing on Fox, give her more airtime than I've ever seen a person like her, a freshman congresswoman, get. This is orchestrated by the really controllers of both those news organizations, and we know who it is, the Jesuit Vatican. Now, most people have no idea this. I believe that the top-level journalists that are making millions of dollars, selling all these books, talking to their eyes turn blue, or their face turns blue, about their supposed ideology of either left-wing or right-wing. But they refuse to really look behind the scenes. And let me read you this first paragraph, then we're going to talk about it. And this is coming from Ocasio Cortez. Christ came to me emblazoned on the upper arm of my beloved cousin Mark. The blue-black ink danced between the bullet scars. I'll continue that. Give me a break. Here she's talking about Christ coming to her on the arm of her brother Mark. Wow. I'm going to read this article because by reading it, you're going to understand she didn't write it. Secondly, it was given to her. And thirdly, she's got a connection to the Jesuits. And we're going to dig deeper to find out really. It's hard to find, though, because these people are secret. They don't tell you who they are. This has been going on for hundreds of years. But we're going to try to get to the bottom of it here on the Investigative Journal, the greatest show on earth, back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app, for all of your mobile devices. Streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, folks, wow. Back for the second half hour of the greatest show on earth, the investigative journal, heard by few, loved by few, but I'll tell you, it's got the best information you're ever going to get, because we can break this down really quickly for you right here. Before I get back to Cortez's Jesuit statements here, on an article that she put her name to in June of 2018 on the Jesuit Review. It's pretty simple. America has been founded for an agenda that we expose in this show, not for the one you think. It's coming to fruition now. The Vatican Jesuit New World Order has always been involved in it, and they are pushing the strings of the Democratic Party to be a radical socialist party. They are also pulling the strings of the Republicans and playing a game here and basically turning the Republicans into what the Democrats used to be. And now they're fighting like cats and dogs. And you're seeing around you all of your things that you love in America fall by the wayside, starting with things like statues they don't want up anymore, words they don't want said. And it's going to get to a point where America is no longer America and will be just one of the satellite countries beholden to Rome. And that will be called the New World Order Control Show. And they're on their way. So look at it that way. So now that we discuss socialism, we've also discussed where socialism started with the Paraguay experiments in the 1600s. Very, very interesting. You can look that up and read all about it. And now we're moving forward to America being pushed into socialism by this young congresswoman who has about as much sense as a donkey in heat. And let me tell you something here. She is a Jesuit shill. You're not going to see her touting that. You're not going to find easy connections. But here's one, penning an article or writing her name on an article written, I bet, by the Jesuits, just like they wrote Mein Kampf, and just like they've written many, many other things for people who work for them. Now, she said this. Well, whoever wrote it for her said this, and it's probably some Jesuit priest. Christ came to me, emblazoned on the upper arm of my beloved cousin Mark. The blue-black ink danced between the bullet scars and stretch marks that graced my cousin's upper body. Atop this crown of thorns depiction was a tattooed banner with the phrase, quote, "Only God can judge me." And who's God on earth? The Pope. So there you go. There you go. Now, if you listen to this woman talk, you know she doesn't talk like this. Many people write the way they talk. This woman had this written for her, because she can't write like this, and it's really about, listen to this, these crown of thorns, the bullets dancing and scars and stretch marks, the blue-black ink, my beloved cousin Mark's upper arm. I never have known Mark, she says, as a criminal. I've only known him as the largest and funniest member of my family. As a child, I saw this tattooed arm over and over again. It appeared at family cookouts, turning a roasted pig in its fifth hour. It held me steady on Mark's broad lap. And it was revealed during the winter time, when our pipes would hiss until the relentless heat would force us to roll our sleeves as far up as they would go. Oh boy. I remember reading his tattoo each time I saw it, trying to understand what it meant. Only God can judge me. Let me tell you what it means, Miss Cortez. It means only the Pope can judge you, right? Because who's God on earth, according to your Catholic faith? The Pope. Innocence, in its mercy, partly excuses us from having to fully reckon with the spiritual gifts of forgiveness, grace, and redemption at the heart of the Catechism. I believe in the forgiveness of sins. Listen to her. She didn't write this. She's calling about redemption in the Catechism? What about the Bible? She's never read 1 minute of the Bible. And you can tell that she has had this written by someone. She doesn't talk this way. And why would anybody put some look at, this is a propaganda article mixing church and state. And she says this, Mark, like several men in my family, have been caught in the web threads of poverty, geography, and lack of opportunity during the fever pitch of the 90s mass incarceration. Baggy pant boys like him fit the description of super predators and thugs that dominated our national discourse at the time. Mark served his time, has been out of the system ever since, a miraculous feat, given that over 75%, you see here we're talking of released state prisoners in the United States are rearrested within 5 years. Okay? Today, he's a union worker and a happily married father of 3 successful children. Now here's the little quote she has. Innocent in its mercy. Remember that? She just said that? Talking about the Catechism. So we can go on with this. We want to read another paragraph or two. It's not long. The still imprisoned are not so lucky. By virtually every measure, the United States incarcerates more of its people than any other nation in the world. When we look at the fuller picture of whom we imprison, for how long and why, it may not be a stretch to conclude that our criminal justice system could very well benefit from a right of penance of its own. This is an overwhelming evidence that mass incarceration evolved as the outgrowth of the Jim Crow laws. Now here we go. That statement, give me a break. which itself was a system rooted in the subjugation of former slaves. So what she's doing now is going to punish everybody. It had nothing to do with Jim Crow. For what's happened in our criminal justice system. I might add that Trump just passed criminal justice reform, and she hates Trump. These people work together. So according to the legal scholar Michelle Alexander, there are more African Americans under correctional control today than there were enslaved in the 1850s. That is, before the Civil War. So what's going on here? We're bringing back the old racist card, aren't we? When it comes to Latinos, the numbers are more confusing. While 40 states track race in their arrest records, only 15 states in the nation track ethnicity. This means that most states have little to no data on Latinos in the criminal justice system. Well, why don't you go to each prison and count them? Call the wardens. I think they got a list. And ensuring, how many Polish people are in prison, Ms. Cortez? How many Italians? I mean, this is ridiculous. If you're not a Latino or black, get out of the country, she says. You guys are racist. Look what you're doing to us. And Trump just said the other day, if you don't like it, leave it. So you can see how the war of words is really dividing people here. She says this means that most states don't have any data. Okay. We must look at what imprisonment entails. Okay. We know. I watch a lot of these, Why don't we talk about the mob, the mafia? Why don't we talk about MS-13? The El Salvadorian gang that cuts people's heads off. Why don't we talk about this? It's an orchestrated effort. Ms. Cortez, you know how it works. You know exactly who you work for. And you won't ever tell anybody, will you? Because you are nothing but a Jesuit shill. And the effects of incarceration on motherhood and mental health. So she gets into discussions of reforming, rehabilitation, forgiveness. Solutions are already beginning, gets into a few things there. And let us not forget, she said, at the end of this, she says, by nature, a society that forgives and rehabilitates its people is a society that forgives and transforms itself. Sounds like a Jesuit statement. That takes a radical kind of love, a secret of which is given in the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And let us not forget, she says, the guiding principle of the least among us, found in Matthew. Wow. The Bible, huh? That we are compelled to care for the hungry, thirsty, homeless, naked, sick, and yes, the imprisoned. But, Ms. Cortez, I think what you're saying is only if they're Latino and black. Because you don't talk about anybody else. Alexandria Cortez, in this says, is a Democratic nominee in the New York's 14th Congressional District, and her opponent in November will be Republican Anthony Pappas. This is on the Jesuit Review. Okay? So, there is a Jesuit connection here, and we know it. It's just that most of the American people are blind to who they really are, the real goal, the real agenda. And again, the media is nothing but a mouthpiece for them, no matter if they're on the left or right. That's my opinion. So, here we go. The next American Revolution, you think there's going to be one? But I found an article regarding this story, because I was seeing that there's a lot of similarities going on now to what was going on in France in 1789, regarding the French Revolution. Not so much about the American Revolution. This is a little different here. And I talked to a couple people, and some people believe that the American Revolution is imminent and will be sparked by the economic instability now rocking the continent. Now listen to me, this was written in 2011. So we push about 9 years forward, And we're seeing, well, there's a rebirth, supposedly, of the economy, right? But is that setting it up for a crash? Interesting. Many economists say so. Frankly, this article says insurrections may occur, but this guy expects the U.S. government to lumber along, dragging the world deeper into poverty and conflict for many years to come. And you can see what's happening. If you listen to Trump, he starts talking, we have the greatest economy, but everybody else is failing. China's going down. The European Union down. Everybody's going down, down, down. But hearing my friend here talk, my thought was, he says his thought was, if a revolution erupts, it will resemble the French of 1789 more than the American one of 1776. Then this guy sat back and tried to figure out why. His friend had arrived at this sudden conclusion. And he said one of the biggest reasons for thinking that America might be going French is that current American society resembles descriptions of what the pre-revolution France more closely than America now resembles its young self. This is interesting. Consider the issue of class structure. America became a magnet for the wretched of the world because it delivered on the promise of classless society. The ancestors left Ireland because they were forced to work as serfs on the land they once owned, and because bumper crops were shipped to England by absentee landlords while starvation claimed the serfs' own children. Now I'm going to add something here. The Jesuits were much involved with that famine in Ireland that pushed all the Irish to America. Sick unto death of being arrested for such sins as speaking their own language, the Irish fled to North America, even though they risked a 50% chance of dying in transit or in the initial hardships of the New World. Doesn't that sound familiar? Folks, may I add, all you hear about the border is that these people are coming from all over the world. They come from Africa to Ecuador, then up through Central America into Mexico into America, and then they have to meet with the cartels, they have to meet with the coyotes, and many of them die. And their chances of survival are basically, well, it was 50-50 back then. Same thing, right? And these people came here for one thing, a chance. That's exactly why these people are coming. They were willing to die for the chance to live on both feet without sinking to their knees before any man. More importantly, they wanted their children to stand tall. And so when America called across the ocean to declare that hard work and merit are rewarded here because all men are created equal, they came. That's the same thing today. Differences in wealth existed then as now. Those differences meant that a fortunate few had more and better access to the goods of the society, including justice. Great wrongs such as slavery also existed and can never be dismissed. But for the majority of immigrants, America delivered. Hard work was rewarded. Social mobility meant that a family's status could rise and fall on the merit of one generation to the next. In 1831, when the aristocratic Frenchman Alexis de Tocqueville arrived in America, he began to record the impressions that would become the pivotal and acclaimed work of democracy in America. De Tocqueville wrote, quote, "Amongst the novel objects that attracted my attention during my stay in the United States, nothing struck me more forcibly than the general quality of conditions. Everywhere people shook hands with each other as though there were no social distinctions. He was especially amazed by the town meetings in England, where everyone seemed to speak out on every topic. A key difference between America and French society sprang from America's respect for the working man, the importance of voluntary associations rather than the state." And Tocqueville wrote this: "Americans of all ages, all conditions, and all dispositions constantly form associations. They have not only commercial and manufacturing companies in which all take part, but associations of thousands of other kinds, religious, moral, serious, feudal, extensive or restricted, enormous or diminutive. If a barn needed to be raised, a school roof repaired, or a social cause advanced, then people banded together. And the work was done, Tocqueville concluded, quote, wherever at the head of some new undertaking you see the government in France. In the United States you will be sure to find an association of the people. That's an interesting distinction because I don't think it's the same way today, right folks? I don't think it's the same way today. Now, back to the article here. The reward of merit and the absence of punitive laws led to an unprecedented prosperity and social equality. And this made for communities bursting at the seams with energy. Today, folks, America is nothing more than a society of elites. Business elites claim subsidies, liability limits, bailouts. Political elites enjoy the economic bounty of skimming off the sweat and blood of taxpayers. Rich salaries, plush expense accounts, platinum pensions, health insurance. Bureaucratic elites, civil servants earn much more than the private sector workers, even though they have greater job security and richer benefits like plush pension plans that taxpayers can only dream about in America. Economic privileges are accompanied by legal ones. In a recent commentary, Mr. Glenn Greenwald, he said this, reports on how blatant the class society has become and how the mainstream media acts as a propaganda machine. Even the Washington Post, which is now just a left-wing rag, mouthpiece for the Democratic Socialist Party, work in a city and live in a nation in which huge numbers of poor and minority residents are consigned to cages for petty and trivial transgression of the criminal law. Post editors virtually never speak out against that. If they have, but that all changes. The indifference disappears. When political elites are targeted for prosecution, even for serious crimes, they never get prosecuted. Look at Hillary Clinton. As the elites scrambled to preserve their legal privileges, the productive middle class that defined early America, folks, is staggering under an ever-increasing burden of taxes, fees, and other legal disadvantages. More and more productive people are driven into poverty and despair that could easily turn into rage. The parallels between pre-revolution France and today's America are clear. See how much time we got here, because I want to go back to Louis the 15th. We only got 4 minutes. Well, let's read a couple paragraphs and come back Monday. Under Louis the 15th, this was in 1715 to 1774, and Louis the 16th, 1774 to 1792, France was plagued by constant and ruinous expensive warfare, America too today, accompanied by economic instability. You see that in America. A huge schism existed between the haves and the have-nots. The haves basically consisted of the nobility and the clergy. Same today. Both of whom were exempt from taxes. Same today. They lived off the productivity of the underprivileged people laboring in private sector. Same today. Most of whom were peasants. Same today. The private sector rested upon agriculture, even though few citizens owned land. You're seeing that happen today. Look at go to the West. Remember when Ted Turner bought up all of whatever state he was in, Montana or whatever? They want to take over your land and your country. Today, just as they did in France, the private sector rested upon agriculture. Few citizens owned land. The nobility and clergy, some 600,000 in population of roughly 25 million, held most of the property. And the same thing as today, they talk about the 1%, right? For example, the church owned 1/5 of the land. You see how much they own in America? Wow. Not to mention what they own in stocks and bonds and other things. It's the same today. In some provinces, it owned up to 2/3. Moreover, the church, which was the Vatican, had feudal privileges that continued from the Middle Ages and bound close to 1 million people to the land as serfs. Oh boy, we got to get back to this article, don't we? And let's just stop there. But what you're seeing is the same situation here that you saw in France. And what happened? There was a revolution. And so that's what we call the Antifa group starting now, or MS-13, working as a violent organization. They're allowed to be here. Otherwise, we'd have never let these people in. We have anti-American Muslim terrorists owning land in upstate New York, and they say up to 30 or 40 other compounds, ready to strike, saying death to America. Why haven't they been told to leave? Because, folks, this is an orchestrated effort, and it's similar to what happened in France. So the next revolution is not going to be like the one orchestrated by Lorenzo Ricci of the Jesuit order in the American Revolution that pitted France against Britain to open up this new world in America for them, as the Constitution allowed freedom of religion. Otherwise, the Vatican folks would have never gotten into this country, because in the beginning, the people that came here didn't want them here because they knew what they did in Europe. So they had to figure out a way to get in, and boy, they did. And see what's happening right now. And if you don't connect them to what's going on, man, you're missing the whole point. You got to realize what I said earlier on the show, that if you get caught into this Democrat or Socialist Party or the Republican Party and you think that's the answer, you're going to lose. And come back to my show on Monday, and we'll talk more about this, as well as enlighten you to the Vatican-led Jesuit New World Order. Okay, have a good weekend, and back Monday on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.